Unpack that a little bit more for me.
So, as we've seen, okay, anyone who hits rock bottom has that choice in front of them. Am I going to continue down the path that I'm currently on and it will lead to death? Or am I going to change my life around and experience a good life? So, and then if you say, you know what, I want to do the good life. Then the question is, how do I do that? Because all I've ever been doing is the path that leads me to the current hell that I'm living in. So then you can say, well, let's try Jesus. Jesus will work. Well, let's try the psychotherapeutic method. That will work. Let's try Islam. That will work. And maybe it's demographics too. Maybe it only works for some people, but it will work so that's what I'm saying is that when it comes to life change, Christianity is not the only, does not have the monopoly on this.
Right. Okay, that makes sense.
Okay. So, and it's like, I realize that probably sounds, I don't know, maybe a little heretical.
It's definitely an out there, just kind of the area of the church I was I've grown up in, and I know peers of mine have grown up in. It's kind of I don't want to say a wild statement to make, but it's kind of like hanging your butt over the edge there, taking like a risk or whatever. It's like the first time you maybe get up on like a wakeboard or something, you're like, whoa, okay.
Yeah.
Let's talk about this.
Yeah. And I think, again, given the data that we have and demythologizing, because these testimonies are so cool, like these Christian
they're
testimonies.
awesome.
They're awesome. And we don't want to denigrate them.
Right.
But when you look at just the factors that are present, the hitting rock bottom, having that choice in front of you, needing a means to that end of I need to figure out how to live my life differently. It's like if you were a secularist, if you're an atheist, you could just say Jesus happened to be the means for that person, and it could have been anything else. And I kind of agree. Is if you're after life change, it doesn't have to just be Jesus.
For strictly life change.
So then the question is, okay, but does God promise life change for the believer? So I don't know. What do you think?
Does God promise life change for the believer? My initial thoughts with this question are, I guess it might depend on the context of it. Because, what are you coming at this with? Because it could be change, like we've been talking about, like, is change promise that you're going to leave your life of sin? Are you going to leave your life of, porn addiction? But then you could also say, like, a change of death to life is salvation in Jesus. Is like, that's a change too.
Yeah.
So I think at least in my mind, sitting right here, it kind of depends on what angle you're coming at the question of what change is promised specifically.
Yeah. So let's take it kind of this direction of, I guess, have you heard this kind of message before? Like, have you heard sermons on the fruits of the Spirit or lessons on that?
I think so. Yeah, I'm sure I've experienced them and heard them several times. I might not be able to like specifically point it out.
Yeah.
But I assume I have.
Let me read it so we just have this fresh in our minds of what this passage is saying. And I think we kind of, if you've grown up in the church, you kind of have an idea of what Paul is talking about, or at least a preconception of what Paul is talking about. So Paul says this, but I say, this is Galatians starting in verse 16, but I say, walk by the Spirit, and you will not gratify the desires of the flesh. For the desires of the flesh are against the Spirit, and the desires of the Spirit are against the flesh. For these are opposed to each other to keep you from doing the things you want to do. So maybe life change, But if you're led by the Spirit, you're not under the law. Now, the works of the flesh are evident: sexual immorality, impurity, sensuality, idolatry, sorcery, enmity, strife, jealousy, fits of anger, rivalries, dissensions, divisions, envy, drunkenness, orgies, and things like these. I warn you, as I warned you before, that those who do such things will not inherit the kingdom of God. So that's all the stuff of I've been living this way. Now I'm in rock bottom. But the fruit of the Spirit, verse 22, is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. Against such things, there is no law. So the question that is like, okay, does a tree have to work hard at bearing fruit?
I don't think so. I think that's just in its genetic code.
Right.
That's just it does it.
It's natural.
Yep.
Right. So, and then on the flip side, I just heard this analogy this morning. I was listening to N.T. Wright, and he actually happened to be talking about some of this stuff.
Convenient.
Yeah, it was very convenient. But he used the analogy of like a Christmas tree can't bear fruit. Right?
Right. I wish it did, though. I mean, you could call the presidents underneath it fruit, but that's not built by the tree.
So you could like tack on fruit to it. But
it itself cannot grow.
It
fruit.
Can't, and the fruit would rot. So I think Christianity, when it comes to this passage, we've kind of set it up to be that, well, if you're a Christian, you will start naturally bearing this kind of fruit.
Right.
You'll naturally love Jesus. You will have these kinds of life change where you're not going to be living in sensuality and idolatry and fits of anger and all that. Like, you're not that anymore. So if you were addicted to something before being a Christian, now you're not. And what's more is that you get to start having this natural fruit of love and joy and peace. And okay, now I'll ask you.
There seems to be a problem.
Okay, what's the problem?
What if I'm still addicted?
Yes.
It's like, what if,
right.
I grew up in a Christian household. There's been several moments where Jesus has become more real, and there's kind of been a rebirth, you could say, or making it my own. That's kind of the buzzword within people who grow up in PK, missionary kids, pastors' kids, or Christian households, is you make your faith your own. But throughout the process of me making my faith my own or growing in a relationship with Jesus, I still sin. I still struggle. I have similar, you could say, sin struggles that I've had since I was 12 years old.
Yeah.
So, and I've asked myself the question, where's the deliverance?
Yeah.
Why am I still here?
Yeah.
Because I'm, what we talked about, it's like, don't I have the Holy Spirit? Shouldn't I just not desire this anymore? Like, why is this here?
And I think if you grow up in the church and you get this kind of messaging, then your expectation is absolutely what is going on. What's wrong with me? Yeah. And okay, so I'll give you a little bit of background to why I started focusing on this. So this is kind of a tangent, but it's related. So you're familiar with purity culture.
Very.
So for those who are not aware of what purity culture is, that definition, maybe, hopefully you never experienced it.
If you never experienced purity culture, God be praised.
Yeah. But if you're not familiar with it and you did experience it, this will probably give some words to your experience. So purity culture is kind of this Christian, I'll put this in air quotes, you can't see me, but there are air quotes, Christian messaging around dating, sex, and marriage. And so that kind of messaging goes like this: do dating God's way, which means having strict boundaries. Don't have a whole lot of physical contact before getting married. Certainly don't do anything sexual with each other. And that can go all the way up to like, don't kiss, don't hold hands, don't cuddle on the couch.
Is premarital eye contact allowed?
I don't know.
Oh dear.
It might be. That might be the only thing that's allowed. And then you get married to this person.
Right.
And if you do dating and sex and marriage God's way, because then you will find a spouse and you will get married, then what will happen is you will have this amazing sexual relationship within your marriage. And if you want to have children, God's going to bless you with children.
That sounds cool.
It sounds awesome, but it's also, for one, it's a prosperity gospel. It's if I put this work in, God will give me this output. He owes me, right? And what happened for a lot of people was they were raised in that, they believed it, they got married, and they found out that sex was awkward. They found out that they had infertility issues. And so then they have a question. Did I do something wrong? Is there something wrong with me? Did I not really do dating God's way? Or is God a liar?
Which is a pretty intense question.
Yeah.
Very, very intense question. Both of them are like stuff that is tough to wrestle with.
Yeah. And the solution to the problem is just going to the Bible and saying, did God actually promise you a spouse, for one? Because a lot of people did this and they ended up single. So it's like, well, what the heck? I was doing dating God's way and I'm still not married.
Where's
right?
my spouse?
So God doesn't promise you a spouse. God doesn't promise if you do get married. That's why we have to have an if with marriage, right? Because there is no promise of when. If you do get married, God does not promise that you're going to have an amazing sexual relationship and sexual compatibility and all that. It's like, well, maybe you have different libidos and, it's going to be hard.
It's a challenge.
But you got to figure it out. Maybe you will struggle with infertility. God doesn't promise to bless you with lots of children. Time and time again, we see in the Old Testament women who are struggling with infertility, and they are the people that God is going to be using for great things. So this is related to this whole question of, does God promise change? Because here's the thing. If God promises you life change in the way that we've talked about it, of you become a Christian, which means you're not addicted to the things that you were previously addicted to. That's part of the package. Mm-hmm. And you're going to have this natural outflow of love and joy and peace and patience, all of the fruits of the Spirit. And then you experience that you're not free from your addiction and you aren't all that natural when it comes to loving God and loving people and not having anxiety and not being able to kick your depression and all this kind of stuff. Okay, then the question becomes, in the same way that it was for purity culture, is there something wrong with me? Mm-hmm. Am I even really a Christian?
That's a question that I've struggled with at points in my life. And I know others do, is like, and that's a scary thought to be like, how do I know? Is my salvation secure? I thought I shouldn't have this problem.
Right. And what often gets asked is, where's the fruit? If I am a Christian, where's the fruit? You'll know them. Jesus even says, you'll know them by their fruits. Can you pick grapes from a thorn bush?
No.
So then it seems like it's these passages are directed right at us if we're still experiencing struggle with sin. So it's like, am I even a Christian? The other thing that you can do is say, God, you didn't hold your end of the bargain. This is your fault. Like, it's your fault that I am the way that I am.
Which is, I don't think most people I know don't go there, but is also a very intense.
Well, and I would question that. I would question
maybe let me rephrase that.
Yeah.
People won't talk about that they went there.
Yes.
But they absolutely have the thought.
I think there's anger towards God.
And I think it's because I guess it's fair to say, and I think in the spirit of vulnerability, it's like there's stuff that I'm angry at God about. I've been angry at God, but I know there's been times where I've in a healthy way kind of directed that, just be like, hey, I'm frustrated, and like prayed about it.
Yeah.
But there's also moments where it's just like I angle it, I get mad at my mom, or I get mad at a friend of mine, or I get angry at something, or I'll go do something to get the anger out, or just channel it at myself. Channel it through different areas of life to like fight my dad, get in an argument with my sister because poker buttons, whatever.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to be angry at God because
you're not supposed to.
Don't you dare.
Right. Which I don't even think is all that biblical, because you look at the Psalms.
There's quite a bit of anger.
There's a lot of that. There's
directed at God in just vulnerable, open prayer.
I mean, how many times that the psalmist is saying, "How long, O Lord?" You know, and calling God out for seeming to be asleep. Okay, but it seems like that those are our options, right? And if I'm not experiencing this kind of life change, I can be, you know, it might be that I'm not really a Christian. It might be that God has abandoned me for whatever reason because I'm not experiencing this life change. All in all, it's extremely discouraging, you know? And then how easy is it going to be for you to fight your sin and addiction when you're that discouraged?
I feel it's going to be a wave.
Yeah.
I mean, in moments, you know, I keep, you know, relating this to myself, and I think others, I can do that also because other people are even relating to that self, that it just, when you're in that moment, you know, why should I even try?
Yeah.
I've asked myself, and I've talked to you about this in the past, is like, why even try?
Yeah.
Because I'm not experiencing this reward. We actually had a conversation about that not too long ago. It's like, I'm putting this work in, I'm doing my due diligence, I'm reading my Bible, I'm praying, and things aren't getting better, and I feel awful.
Yeah. So here's what I'm going to say. I don't believe that God promises to change your life for you.
Next week on Brax Text, we will discuss, is there change available?
There is. I believe that there is change available to us as humans. But, okay, first of all, my understanding of the gospel is not only Jesus died on the cross for your sins, and therefore you get to go to heaven when you die. Honestly, I don't see a whole lot of that in the gospels themselves. Like if you read the gospels, that isn't the messaging of them.